The wills and trusts problem from February of 1995 is quite an interesting and quite a complicated problem. It's also a fairly straightforward problem, and we can learn a couple of lessons from this fact pattern that can stand us in very good stead on the real bar exam. Take a look at the call of the question. What portion of Gloria's estate, if any, should be distributed to each of Tom, Hank, Gail, Max, Ben, and Seth? Discuss. Well, intuitively, we want to organize our answer around the beneficiaries. And, as you'll see, ultimately, I do give a straight answer about what each one of these potential takers gets. But one important lesson that we've already touched on in this seminar is we've got to establish the validity of the appropriate documents before we focus on the bottom line with regard to who gets what. So, appreciating that this question is asking us about what the beneficiaries get, we still are going to be mindful about establishing their theory for recovery, meaning interpreting whatever documents are involved. Go to the top of the problem and take a look with me at the fact pattern. In paragraph 1, we see Gloria, our testator, signing a typewritten will in the presence of Tom and Larry. Also, in this first paragraph, we get more details about validity. Then, again, we get the predictable issue of the witness beneficiary. Tom, the witness, is given $10,000, and we already know that that gives rise to a presumption of undue influence. Next, we have a residence gift to the daughter, provided she survives the testator by 30 days. Next, we have Megacorp stock going to Max, requesting that he distribute it as indicated in a letter to be found with the will. Well, that looks like a trust tucked into a will, and we're going to have to analyze it carefully. Then, item 4, residue of the estate to only son Seth. So far, so good. It's all fairly straightforward. Next, Gloria and Dora are involved in a car crash. Dora is killed instantly. Gloria dies 1 day later. So it looks as if the gift to Dora is going to fail because she didn't live long enough for it to, as it were, vest. Next, we find Gloria's will, found in a safety deposit box, along with a typewritten, signed, but unwitnessed letter to Max requesting he distribute the Megacorp stock to Ben, a needy cousin whom the settlor had assisted in the past. Max truthfully testifies that the will was prepared after the will was executed and that he orally agreed with Gloria to distribute the stock as requested in the letter. So, for a change, we finally get somebody who is a character in a wills and trust problem who's basically honorable and good. Max is about the nicest guy ever to appear on a California bar exam wills and trust problem. Okay, his testimony is relevant. His information will find a home in our answer. Now we learn about the survivors. Dora is survived by Hank, the husband, and Gail, the daughter. In addition to Hank and Gail, Tom, Max, Ben, and Seth all are alive after Gloria is dead. Gloria's net estate consists of her residence, the Megacorp stock, and $100,000 in cash. And then we get the call of the question again. What do Tom, Hank, Gail, Max, Ben, and Seth all get? And we're told we're dealing with a statutory scheme that is the same as California's. That's helpful, and we will have a little bit of local law present here as well. But once again, we've got to focus on organization and thoroughness. If you go into a wills and trust problem like this, looking to recite a lot of boilerplate law, you're going to be disappointed. This is a question that obviously requires a fair amount of factual analysis. So, take a look at the analytical outline that I've presented to frame the issues. And here, you'll see I keep it very simple. This is not a fact pattern that requires a great deal of time to outline. We focus on the validity of the will. We could have organized it internally along lines of capacity, intent, and formalities, but I choose not to do so. It's clear that this is not a question about validity. This is a question about distribution. So I nod to validity briefly and move on. Next, we focus on the gift to Tom. It looks like a presumption of undue influence, and Unlike at least one other recent wills and trusts question, it doesn't look as if there are many facts to rebut the presumption of undue influence, so I talk about what happens to the gift, assuming it fails. Next, we move to the resident's gift to Dora. It is conditioned on her surviving by 30 days, which she does not do. I also spend a little bit of time on lapse and anti-lapse because it is at least peripherally involved. Next, we write about the megacorp stock. I talk about the integration and incorporation by reference issues with regard to the letter to Max, and we focus on the codicil and trust issues. Next, the residue to Seth, and then, finally, I offer a conclusion which is a straight answer to the call of the question. Now, if one were to try to organize this answer around the beneficiaries, I think that he or she would find that there would be a lot of problems. The reason is we'd have to go back and forth to allude to the analysis, which is much easier to present in the format that I've suggested, going chronologically, focusing on the facts, and then, finally, wrapping it up with a series of quick bottom lines about who gets what. So, with all that in mind, let's go to the top and have a look at an answer to this fact pattern. It's a pretty complicated question for a wills problem, but not that difficult. So, we look up front at my very first paragraph, and you'll see I lead with the facts. I explain what Gloria did, and I indicate that the witness beneficiary problem won't invalidate the will, but instead will threaten the bequest to Tom. Then, in the second section, I focus on the gift to Tom, and I give a discussion on the presumption of undue influence, and I go into plenty of detail about what it would take to Tom to be able to rebut this presumption of undue influence. It seems to me rather difficult for him to do so based on the facts that we have been given. So I assume ultimately that he won't be able to rebut the presumption, and I give him nothing. Next, we turn to the resident's gift to Dora. And it seems to me that the intent of the testator was clear. She wanted to give this residence to her daughter only if Dora survived her. So I say up front the gift fails. But notice I don't stop there. I go one step further to consider the anti-lapse analysis, and I don't waste a huge amount of time on it, but I do think that this paragraph may be about the most important one in the answer. It's the one that you would be most likely to leave out. It's easy to say the gift was a conditional gift, the condition wasn't met, game over, and then move on. But I think having a section on anti-lapse allows us to find a little bit of a home for some more analysis. I discuss the anti-lapse statute in some detail, although, again, I'm not spending that many sentences on it. Ultimately, I indicate that the residence is going to go to Seth because it's going to be part of the residue. Next, I focus on what I think we could probably agree is the most complicated question in this fact pattern, the one with regard to the megacorp stock gift. Notice here that, as often is the case, I lead with the facts. I explain what Gloria's gift to Max was, and I indicate that the will refers to this other document. I also indicate that the other document was found, but that it was signed and unwitnessed. So I talk about integration and incorporation by reference. And it seems to me that we can integrate this document into the will, even though it fits the description actually, we can't incorporate it, even though it fits the description and even though it was found. Now, I also focus on the codicil analysis, and I find that this is not a valid codicil either. But next, we focus on the trust analysis. And here, the fact that Max is an honorable man comes to the fore. He truthfully testifies about his oral agreement with Gloria, and we indicate that the facts appear to be that he wants to keep his word. So the question becomes, will this megacorp stock gift fail and go to Seth, or will it go to Ben as Gloria intended? I think that Seth does have a pretty good argument, but ultimately I find that Max's honesty is going to cost Seth this part of the estate. I think the testimony of Max will establish that a trust was created between Gloria and Ben. And as you see in my analysis, in the next to the last paragraph in section 4, I actually work through the elements of a valid trust. I talk about the identifiable corpus, etc. And I think that's appropriate and perhaps necessary to do a really outstanding job on analyzing this fact pattern. I conclude that Gloria's intent is obvious. The stock is going to be conveyed to Max as a trustee for Ben. Next, I focus on the residue gift to Seth. I indicate that Gloria's estate included $100,000 in cash that had not been mentioned specifically in the will. And so, that's going to be part of the residue. Seth gets this money on top of the residence. I also indicate that Seth will take the $10,000 bequest intended for Tom, assuming that Tom can't rebut the presumption of undue influence. Also, if the bequest to Max is deemed void as a failed secret trust, Seth gets the Megacorp stock also. Now, I've already concluded that the secret trust will be implemented based on the truthful testimony of Max. So I am not reaching a contrary result here, but I am indicating that in the event that one of the conclusions that I have reached earlier is not reached by the probate court, there will be a different result. Also, I indicate that if Gloria's will were judged invalid for some reason that we can't see, Seth would take the whole estate. Now, we reach the conclusion. After all of this analysis, finally, I'm willing to put down in black and white a straight answer to the call of the question. Tom gets nothing, unless he can rebut the presumption of undue influence. Hank gets nothing because of the terms of Gloria's will and because he is not kindred to Gloria. Gail gets nothing even though she is kindred because of the terms of the will. Max gets the megacorporation stock as a trustee for Ben. Ben is the beneficiary of the trust that Max will administer. And Seth takes the full $100,000 residue of the estate, and unless Tom rebuts the presumption of undue influence, he will take that money as well. So, a series of straight questions and ultimately straight answers.